How to create a combat mission scenario AI plan. Part 2. Creating a basic AI plan. The setup. This video series is aimed at those totally and utterly new to creating scenario AI plans for the Battlefront Combat Mission game series. In part 2, I'll describe and show you how to allocate units to AI groups, select an AI plan, and deploy units in the AI plan setup. I'll also show you how to create variable setups with units, having them placed in something that approaches a tactical formation. There are many approaches to creating AI plans and a great deal of nuance. In fact, I liken creating scenarios and associated AI plans as a game within the game. So for now, please think of what I'm showing you as the absolute very basic building blocks. In later episodes, we'll take a deeper dive into the various aspects of creating an AI plan, including developing a coherent battle plan and associated courses of action, how we can translate this into an AI plan, and using triggers for the AI to react to the human player's actions. But for now, let's keep things really simple. Combat Mission Planning 101. For this video, I'm going to create an AI plan in Red Thunder for a German attack using some half-tracks, mounted infantry and attached tanks. Whilst I'm using Red Thunder, the principles are the same for any of the Combat Mission game series, as they all share the same game engine. AI plan core concepts. Allocating units to AI groups. Let's open up a scenario in the game editor and head to the purchase section. Here you see I've already purchased my attack force. Now I'm going to allocate the AI units. So using the F function keys, I'll allocate an AI group number to my units. For the tanks, and to keep things simple, I'll allocate them to one AI group, in this case A2. For the Panzer Grenadier, I'll allocate the platoon to two AI groups. The advantage of this method is the troops' standard vehicles can move independently of each other after dismount. So the troops are A3 and their SPW are A4. Now the downside of this method is it uses two AI groups out of the 16 available ones, but as I want both units to be able to operate independently, and it's a small scenario, it's not an issue. Which AI plan? Now go to the AI select, AI plan 1, and underneath you'll see drop down menu which you can click on and see several options. As I'm only creating one AI plan, it makes no real odds which used option I select. For the other plans, ensure that the not used option is checked for them all. It should be by default if it's a freshly minted scenario, but if you're using an existing scenario or you've stripped out some units or a map, it's probably best to do that to save any problems when you then come to test your AI plan, just in case it picks up an existing AI plan. The setup. There are two key parts to the setup. The first is how we place units on the 3D map within the editor. The second is how the AI plan then interacts with the setup you have created in the 3D map view via new map zone tiles you might choose to paint on the AI plan 2D map. In the unit purchase setup, I tend to deploy units as I would set them up, in tactical formations, and ensuring their C2 is kept intact within the site-specific setup zones. You'll find when you initially purchase units, then go to deploy them, they appear as a mishmash, so you'll need to spend some time sorting them out. I've pre-made the site-specific setup zones in this scenario, and I've already done my deployment in the tactical formations, so I'll start off with, as you can see. You'll notice in the 3D view you will only see the site-specific deployment zone. Now, if we go to the AI plan section of the editor, we can see that both sides' deployment zones are visible. Using map zones to create tactical formations. Vehicles. Within the setup option in the AI plan, I can override the deployment I made within the units/deploy 3D view by painting setup points within the 2D map. As I have 3 tanks in AI Group A2, I'll paint 3 map zone squares within setup zones under AI Group 2 in order 1. Now, I can't see how this will actually look in a 3D view until I actually play the scenario. Let's take a quick look at how we do that. Checking a variable setup in an AI plan. For this, you'll have to ensure your scenario is in the scenario folder, so it shows up in the game battle section on startup. Then ensure you start the scenario from the opposite side, in this case the Soviets, and ensure the skills section you select Scenario Author Test. Once the scenario loads, I'll see the Soviet side, but I'll also see the AI player's German units. The tanks in the AI Group 2 are aligned on the road as per my default setup. Now see what happens when I hit go. And there you go, one tactically arrayed tank group. Using map zones to create tactical formations, infantry. The previous method works for infantry up to platoon strength, as long as you have painted enough map zones for the units. For example, 4 sections in a platoon in an AI group will need 4 painted 8 by 8 metre map zones. I find though, once you get above that level, it tends to mix everything up rather than retain a tactical formation. For example, I've dismounted my Panzer Grenadiers and I've set them up in the 3D view. Now I've painted some setup zones for them in the AI plan 2D map. Start the scenario as before, and as you can see, they shift to the new position. You can do the same thing using the large blobs, but just make sure the blob is continuous and large enough to accommodate the unit you're seeking to place in it, and the AI will then place units accordingly and will, to the best of its ability, seek to maximise any available cover. Using map zones to create tactical formations. Key considerations. One of the things regarding using map zones is you can experiment and see what works best for your given situation. My default for vehicle based units is I use separate map zones, one 8 by 8 metre square per vehicle, and for infantry units I tend to use a large map zone shaped blob. We'll see how all this works in more detail when we come to creating orders. Using facing zones. So, back to our scenario in the setup. I'm going to stick with my default, which is the tanks and column on the road, and the SPW platoon arrayed on its right flank. One thing I've omitted, and the useful habit to get into, is using the face command. So let's do that for both the AI groups, A2 for the tanks and A4 for the SPW in their respective setups within the AI plan. Using the Alt left click command, we paint a green facing zone. I'd suggest you doing this as far across the map as you can. If you paint it too close, the units will tend to orient it inwards towards it, which can lead to units on the edges facing inwards. The AI group will then align to face that direction where you painted the green facing zone. If you don't do this, the unit will orient towards the next painted map movement zone. Now, that's not an issue if it's in the direction facing the enemy, but it could be suboptimal if it's not, as your tanks turn their bums to the enemy. Next, in part 3, we'll look at plotting a series of orders for AI groups. Thanks for watching, and please, if you found this useful, I'd truly appreciate if you could hit the like button, and if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. Many thanks. Cheerio.